Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Week 3 session. Today's topic is discretion. Now, I know that word might sound a little old-fashioned, like something most grandparents might say, but stick with me, because once you understand what Catherine means by it, I think you'll start seeing it everywhere in your life. Here's the simple version. Discretion is the art of seeing clearly. It's the ability to tell apart what truly leads you to God and what just feels like it does. And honestly, that is one of the most useful skills a person can have. Whether you're deciding who to trust, how to spend your time, or what voice in your head to listen to, discretion is what helps you choose wisely. So let's dive in. This is going to be a good one. What is discretion? God's gift of spiritual sight. What exactly is discretion? Let me start with a question. Have you ever done something that felt really good in the moment, but afterwards you felt kind of empty or maybe a little ashamed? Like you ate a whole bag of chips and felt great for 5 minutes and then terrible? That feeling, that gap between this feels good and this is actually good for me, that's exactly the gap that discretion helps us navigate. St. Catherine defines discretion in a beautiful way. She says it is a true knowledge of herself and of God. That's it. 2 things, knowing yourself honestly and knowing God truly. When you know yourself, your real motivations, your fears, your desires, you stop being fooled by your own emotions. And when you know God, His love, His character, His voice, you stop being fooled by counterfeits. Catherine calls discretion the mother of all virtues. That's a big claim. What she means is, without discretion, even good things can go wrong. You can pray too much and neglect your family. You can fast so hard that you become proud of it. You can serve others but secretly want the credit. Discretion is what keeps all the other virtues honest. And here's the really encouraging part. It's not something you have to manufacture on your own. It's a gift from God. You grow into it through prayer, through humility, and through honest self-reflection. Which brings us to the text we're studying this week. The Treatise on Discretion, Catherine's Guide to Seeing Clearly. The Treatise on Discretion is one of the 4 major sections of the dialogue. And it's basically God answering one of the most important questions a spiritual person can ask. How do I know if what I feel is truly from you? Think about how often that question comes up in real life. You feel inspired to do something. Is that God or just your own enthusiasm? You feel at peace about a decision. Is that genuine peace, or are you just avoiding the hard thing? You feel convicted about something. Is that the Holy Spirit, or is it guilt from your own perfectionism? These are not easy questions, and Catherine knew that. That's why she asked God directly, and the dialogue is the record of his answer. God tells Catherine that the soul needs to be like a skilled craftsperson. A good craftsperson doesn't just grab any tool and start working. They look carefully. They measure twice. They know their materials. In the same way, a soul with discretion doesn't just act on every impulse. It pauses. It examines. It asks, where does this lead? One of the most important lines in this section is this, and I want you to really hear it. Discretion is nothing other than the true knowledge that the soul ought to have of herself and of me. God is saying, know yourself. Know me, and you will see clearly. That's the whole program. Simple, but not easy. Let's look at one of the most practical applications of this. True versus false consolation. How do we know what comes from God? Okay, this next part is one of my favorite things Catherine teaches, and I think it's going to be really useful for you. She talks about the difference between true consolation and false consolation. Now, consolation just means a feeling of comfort or spiritual joy, that warm sense of, yes, this is right,
that you sometimes get when you pray or do something good. The question is, not every warm feeling comes from God. True consolation, the kind that comes from God, has certain qualities. It brings lasting peace. It makes you more humble, not more proud. It increases your desire to love God and love others. And here's the key test. It survives the morning after. You feel it today, and tomorrow it's still there. Maybe quieter, but real and steady. False consolation is different. It can feel incredibly intense at first, like a spiritual high, but it tends to make you focus more on yourself. It might make you feel special or superior or like you've arrived somewhere. And when it fades, and it always fades, it leaves you restless, looking for the next emotional experience.
Catherine's test is simple. Does this feeling draw me closer to God and to other people, or just to myself? If it draws you outward in love and service, it's probably from God. If it draws you inward in self-satisfaction or pride, be careful. This is so practical for everyday life. Think about a time you felt really good about something spiritual. Was it true consolation or false? You don't have to answer out loud, just hold the question. And the reason we can even ask this question honestly, because of what we're looking at next. Humility, the root of wisdom. Without humility, the soul sees nothing clearly. Here's a word that sometimes makes people uncomfortable: humility. I think it gets a bad reputation because people confuse it with being a pushover, or putting yourself down, or pretending you have no gifts. That's not what Catherine means at all. For Catherine, humility is simply seeing yourself truthfully. Not too high, not too low, just accurately. And she says this is the foundation of everything. Without humility, discretion is impossible. Why? Because pride makes us blind. Think about it this way. If you're absolutely convinced you're right, you stop looking for evidence that you might be wrong. If you're certain your feelings are always from God, you stop examining them. If you think you've already figured yourself out, you stop growing. Humility is the willingness to say, I might be missing something. Let me look again. There's a beautiful image I love for this. Imagine you're trying to see a reflection in a pool of water. If the water is choppy and disturbed, full of pride, self-justification, defensiveness, you can't see clearly. But when the water is still and calm, that's humility. You can see yourself exactly as you are. And when you can see yourself clearly, you can also see God more clearly. Catherine says, the soul that truly knows itself knows God. They go together. So humility isn't weakness. It's actually the bravest thing, the courage to be honest before God, without pretending and without hiding. Now, if humility is the foundation, what's the engine? What actually moves the spiritual life forward? That's what we look at next. The role of holy desire. What is your heart really reaching for? I want to tell you something that might surprise you. Catherine is very pro-desire. A lot of religious teaching can make it sound like all desires are dangerous, like the goal of the spiritual life is to want nothing. But that's not what Catherine teaches at all. She says, the soul cannot live without love. It must always be loving something. We are made to desire. The question is not whether we desire, it's what we desire and where that desire is rooted. Catherine uses a beautiful image. She calls desire the foot of the soul. Just like your feet carry you wherever you go, your desires carry your soul toward God or away from Him. Holy desire is desire that is rooted in love of God. It might look like,
a deep longing to pray, a burning desire to serve someone who is suffering, a hunger to understand God's word, a passion to live with integrity, even when it's costly. These desires, even when they feel intense, even when they're uncomfortable, are gifts. They are God drawing you toward Himself. Disordered desire is desire that is rooted in self-love. It might look like wanting to be seen as spiritual, wanting the comfort of religion without the cost of transformation, wanting God's blessings without God Himself. Here's the practical question Catherine invites us to ask every single day. Where is this desire leading me? Toward God and others, or toward myself alone? That question, asked honestly and humbly, is the practice of discretion in real time. And that's actually your challenge for this week, which we'll look at in a moment. But first, let's check out this week's discussion questions together.
Discussion questions. Reflect, share, and discover together. All right, this is my favorite part of every session. Let's actually talk about this together, because I learned so much from hearing your experiences. We have 3 questions today, and I want to remind you, there are no wrong answers here. The goal isn't to sound impressive. The goal is to be real. Real sharing is what helps all of us grow. Question 1. Have you ever experienced a spiritual emotion or desire you weren't sure was from God? How did you navigate it? Question 2. Catherine says all virtue is rooted in love. How does this change your perspective on rules or spiritual disciplines? Question 3. Why do you think humility is so central to Catherine's teaching on wisdom? Weekly challenge. Watch your desires. Watch your desires this week. Okay, here is your challenge for this week, and I love this one because it's so practical. The challenge is simply this. Watch your desires. Not judge them, not suppress them, just watch them. Here's how it works. 5 simple steps. Step 1, notice. When a strong desire arises for anything, just notice it. Don't act on it immediately. Just say to yourself, oh, there's a desire. Step 2, pause. Take 1 slow breath. If you want, place your hand on your heart. Just pause for 5 seconds. Step 3, ask. Ask yourself honestly, is this leading me toward God and others, or toward myself alone? Step 4, offer. Say quietly, out loud or in your heart, Lord, I offer this desire to you. Purify it. Use it for good. Step 5, reflect. At the end of each day, write 1 sentence in your journal. Today, I noticed this desire. That's it. 1 sentence. Now, we don't need to do this perfectly. We don't need to do it every single time. Even if we do it once a day, we will start to notice patterns. We will start to see which desires consistently lead us toward peace and which ones leave us feeling empty. And that awareness, that is discretion growing in us. Remember, we are not trying to eliminate desire. We are learning to let God shape it. That's a beautiful thing. To help us go deeper this week, here's our reading. Reading for this week. Dive deeper into the treatise on discretion. Your reading this week is from the early chapters of the treatise on discretion in your edition of the dialogue. Focus especially on the sections where God explains the nature of discretion and its relationship to self-knowledge and humility. If your edition has chapter numbers or section headings, look for anything that mentions discretion, self-knowledge, or the light of reason. As you read, hold 1 question in your mind. Where in my own life do I struggle to tell apart what is truly from God and what is from my own desires? Don't try to answer it before you read.
Let the reading help you answer it. And here's my one tip for reading Catherine. Go slowly. She is not a writer you skim, she is a writer you savor. When a sentence strikes you, and one will, stop. Don't rush to the next paragraph. Let that sentence sit in your heart like a seed. You might read only one page in 10 minutes. That's perfect. That's how Catherine should be read. Let us now look at the reading plan for the week.
7-day reading plan for week 3. Day 1, what is discretion? Passage 1, the definition. Day 2, humility as the root. Passage 2, humility and self-knowledge. Day 3, true versus false consolation. Passage 3, consolation. Day 4, discretion and neighbor love. Passage 4, love of neighbor. Day 5, virtue must bear fruit. Passage 5, the child of virtue. Day 6, reread your favorite passage slowly. Your choice. Day 7, write a short prayer of response to God. Personal reflection. The following are the passages mentioned above.
Week 3 reading passages. The Dialogue of St. Catherine of Siena. Treatise on Discretion. Early chapters. Source: The Dialogue of St. Catherine of Siena, translated by Algar Thorold, public domain. Available at CCEL. Introduction to this week's reading. Week 3 introduces us to one of the most practical and beautiful sections of the dialogue, the Treatise on Discretion. In these early chapters, God reveals to Catherine the nature of true spiritual wisdom, not a rigid set of rules, but a living, breathing knowledge of self and of God that grows from humility and love. As you read, notice how God uses the image of a tree to describe the soul's growth, and how he insists that all virtue must be rooted in love, not fear.
Passage 1, Day 1, the definition of discretion. This virtue of discretion is no other than a true knowledge which the soul should have of herself and of me, and in this knowledge is virtue rooted. Discretion is the only child of self-knowledge, and wedding with charity has indeed many other descendants, as a tree which has many branches. But that which gives life to the tree, to its branches and its root, is the ground of humility in which it is planted, which humility is the foster mother and nurse of charity, by whose means this tree remains in the perpetual calm of discretion. The Dialogue, Treatise on Discretion.
What God is saying here, discretion, the ability to judge rightly in spiritual matters, is not a natural talent or a clever skill. It is born from honest self-knowledge, combined with knowledge of God. When these two are joined together in humility, the soul becomes stable, calm, and wise. The tree is you. The ground is humility. The branches are all the virtues that grow from this rooted life. Reflection prompt. Think of a time when you made a decision that felt right in the moment, but later seemed unwise. What was missing? Self-knowledge, knowledge of God, or humility?
Passage 2, Day 2, humility as the root of all wisdom. The root of discretion is a real knowledge of self and of my goodness, by which the soul immediately and discreetly renders to each one his due, chiefly to me, in rendering praise and glory to my name, and in referring to me the graces and the gifts which she sees and knows she has received from me. The Dialogue, Treatise on Discretion. What God is saying here, true wisdom begins with two honest acknowledgments. I am not the source of my own goodness, and everything I have is a gift from God. When the soul sees this clearly, she stops taking credit for her virtues and stops despairing over her failures. She simply gives God what belongs to God: praise,
gratitude, and trust. Reflection prompt. What gifts or strengths do you have that you sometimes forget to trace back to God? How would your daily life change if you consciously offered them back to Him each morning?
Passage 3, Day 3. True versus false consolation. I withdraw from their minds my consolation and allow them to fall into battles and perplexities. All this they do because they feel themselves deprived of mental consolation. Such as these love me for my gifts and not for myself, withdrawing their charity if they see their own profit or consolation withdrawn. The dialogue, treatise on discretion. What God is saying here, God sometimes withdraws the feeling of His presence, not to punish us, but to test whether we love Him for Himself or only for the good feelings He gives us. A soul that only prays when it feels good is still spiritually immature. True discretion helps us recognize the difference between genuine spiritual consolation, which leads to love and service, and false consolation, which leads to self-satisfaction and spiritual pride. Reflection prompt. Have you ever felt spiritually dry? Your prayer felt empty and God felt distant? Looking back, what did that season teach you about the nature of your love for God?
Passage 4, Day 4. The Supreme Office of Discretion, Love of Neighbor. Holy discretion ordains that the soul should direct all her powers to my service with a manly zeal, and that she should love her neighbor with such devotion that she would lay down 1,000 times, if it were possible, the life of her body for the salvation of souls. The dialogue, treatise on discretion. What God is saying here, discretion is not just about inner spiritual growth. It must overflow into love of neighbor. The wisely discerning soul does not hoard her spiritual insights. She pours them out in service. Catherine's vision of love is bold and total, a love that would give everything for the salvation of even one soul. Reflection prompt. In what practical way can your spiritual life this week overflow into service for someone around you? Passage 5, Day 5. Virtue must bear fruit through the neighbor. Perfect virtue cannot exist and give fruit except by means of the neighbor. Even as a woman who has conceived a child, if she do not bring it forth so that it may appear before the eyes of men, deprives her husband of his fame of paternity. It is the same with me, who am the spouse of the soul. If she do not produce the child of virtue in the love of her neighbor, she has not conceived virtue at all. The dialogue, treatise on discretion. What God is saying here, this is one of Catherine's most striking images. Virtue that stays hidden inside the soul and never reaches the neighbor is like a pregnancy that never results in a birth. It is incomplete. God, as the spouse of the soul, is glorified when the soul's inner life produces visible fruit in love and service to others. Reflection prompt. What virtue or spiritual growth have you experienced recently that has not yet found its way into your relationships or service to others? Walking in wisdom. We've covered a lot today, and I want to take just a moment to let it settle. We talked about what discretion really is, not just being careful, but a God-given ability to see clearly. We explored the difference between true and false consolation. We looked at humility as the foundation of all wisdom. And we talked about holy desire, how the desires of our heart, when offered to God, become the very engine of our spiritual life. And I want to leave you with this quote from St. Catherine. It's one of her most famous, and I think it captures everything we've been talking about. Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire. That is the invitation of discretion.
Not to become someone else, not to follow a formula, but to see yourself clearly enough and to know God truly enough that you can become, fully and freely, who He made you to be. And when that happens, the world notices. So this week, watch your desires. Read slowly. Pause before you act. Ask God to show you where He is leading you. And know that you are not doing this alone. We are walking this road together. Next week, we'll be in week 4, Discretion, the tears of the soul, where we go deeper into how Catherine understands grief, contrition, and the different kinds of tears that water the soul's growth. It's a beautiful and surprisingly comforting session. Thank you for your time in viewing this video, and may God bless you always.